Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Free Radical Media Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Eric Scott Picard, joined as always by Patrick Ryan. So tonight, our guest, Louis Sagar, is the CEO of Evolver.net. Many of you are probably familiar with Evolver. They've got a big social media presence. They've got a big online presence. I'm just going to read from their about page real briefly, and then we'll speak to Lou. Evolver is creating a platform for content, learning, and commerce, serving a global community of conscious consumers seeking optimal states of well-being in mind, body, and spirit. We intend to become a leading trust agent for individuals and groups participating in our transformative culture, one of wisdom, beauty, and fun. So this is something we talk a lot about on the show, transformative culture. It's definitely something that's important, and I think Lou knows quite a lot about it from his work with Evolver. Lou, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to join you guys. Thank you.
Welcome, Lou.
Yeah, great to be here on such a good topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've been fans of Evolver for quite some time now, even before we started to do the show.
Yeah.
So it is good to have you on.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you.
So why don't you, first of all, just for people listening out there, why don't you tell them a little bit about Evolver, the Evolver social movement, what you guys do?
Sure. Well, Evolver is pretty much dedicated to trying to provide access for arguably the conscious consumer who are increasingly self-directed in wanting to deepen their knowledge base on a variety of topics that we dub as the transformative cultural, movement. So these topics are at Evolver kind of categorized. So we have, categories such as shamanism, the exploration of understanding indigenous cultures, ancient cultures, how to preserve those cultures and get the wisdom from those cultures. Sacred geometry, which very much deals with the universe, the science and mathematics of how the universe has been formed, those mathematical and scientific constructs, which in many cases were anticipated or envisioned by ancient cultures as well. So flower of life, tree of life, the whole sacred geometry. Lucid dreaming, the ability to begin to practice stepping out of your dream state in order to observe it, to deepen your awareness. And then, of course, a whole host of things. Design science, very influenced by thought leaders such as a Buckminster Fuller, and the impact on that on architecture, urban environments, and so on. So that part of the business is a learning, very much trying to be a resource, a destination online where people can come. We host webinars, courses on a variety of topics, and we connect with the top thought leaders and experts. Some of these topics are a bit more on the frontier, and many of these topics are becoming more and more, I would say, more mainstream within the conscious consumer's interests. So the company has really been developed out historically. The founders go back to really using altered states of consciousness, both through psychotropic, psychedelic drug experimentation, as well as meditation and non-drug related pursuits in order to deepen and understand altered states of consciousness. And many of your viewers probably know that in the 60s and 70s, there was a fairly direct effort to suppress research into altered into psychedelics particularly, and psychotropic drugs, and actually was so strong that these drugs were classified into levels of illegality. You couldn't even get money to do research. So the whole burying of exploring altered states of consciousness, probably the greatest mentor and thought leader of the generation was Terence McKenna.
Yeah.
We would see him as our, the really deep thinker. And so the company was birthed in that, bringing awareness to that through a publication that we have called Reality Sandwich. And then over the last 4 or 5 years, we've kind of matured into a business that's a social commerce platform where we generate our awareness through both the sale of online courses and commerce products. Social commerce, many of your viewers may understand or may not, is when you begin to use content to engage with your audience. Many call it engaging with your community, and therefore the consumption of the content or the products that the brand is offering to the community is more organic, more natural. There's a more natural affinity than strictly, a store selling products online or offline. So, and so that's how we started,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, and I do like that model. It's kind of a more a friendly face of commerce, I suppose you could say. It's kind of like you're part of a community with Evolver, and honestly, when I first became aware of you guys, I didn't even know you sold products.
Right.
So it's
Yeah, I think at a time where we are trying very hard to figure out how do you create these kind of new constructive capitalist businesses, right? Because there's certainly a great argument for the nonprofit, non-commercial, benevolent, but then sooner or later, company tries to mature, and of course you can go through the advertising route and those models. I'm a digital strategist by recent experience, my recent experiences in digital strategy. And so I think we felt ultimately that product would be a better way for us to trade, to build the trust, to build the currency we needed to build the company, and there's a lot of great opportunities for us to trade on that social currency, people being more engaged, giving them more access to more content, more products. But at this stage, I think we're really comfortable with this combination of learning and education, where you build trust, teach people, give people transparency to the information, and hopefully you're rewarded by another group of people or the same that will consume the products that we promote.
Yeah, and it does seem like education's really kind of the core of your model. You guys offer a lot of
Yeah, I think education's really education and exchange is really such a key thing, because the conscious consumer today is much more self-directed. And that self-direction gets, people want to educate themselves. They want to become more informed. And when we were researching, well, what should we sell? How should we sell? What should we sell? We did a lot of work at trying to figure out what was going on in the what going on that we should tap into. Which I'm happy to talk about with you.
Yeah. Let's explore that a little bit.
Well, we feel there are some. We decided that we wanted that there was a really interesting movement in underway, which is the kind of contemporary herbal movement. Um, the sale of botanical medicines and herbal remedies, which for a long time was kind of a hippie, back to earth offering, not well regulated, very trust based. Somebody said that this did something. If you took this, it would do this, and that pretty much has been replaced by, in Evolver's case, revisiting our dedication to plants and plant medicine. So that clearly we're influenced by the shamanic and the indigenous cultures and how they use plants. The fact that we have the whole cannabis movement that's going on, which is very interesting now and exciting, that's plant based, and the fact that the future of the cannabis movement, we believe at Evolver, and we're quite involved in that movement, will more and more look like a wellness presentation than simply an alternative to alcohol to get high or recreational. That really the birth of the decriminalization of cannabis is coming from, in many respects, patient has pain, it relieves pain, and we're working very hard to understand and present the cannabis movement as ultimately something that can be a wellness choice, whether you choose to do it or not. And then there's a new generation of herbalists, very much referenced and influenced by the farm to table movement, where many of us are more and more interested in the ingredients going into the food, the freshness, local, buying from farmers markets. It's impacting, chefs all over the country, restaurants all over the country. And so this is going on in the herbal movement, where different pockets in the country, you have herbalists growing, organic elderberries in mid-coast Maine, or terrific rose and rosemary herbs in Vermont, and stuff's going on in Oregon. And so we decided to curate and open an apothecary to focus on botanical medicines, tinctures, and tonics. And so and try to marry our interest in the transformative culture with bringing people into a relationship with what's in their medicine cabinet, which is our theme, and really exploring, well, where are the benefits, where are the health benefits, and so that's one very big, been a big focus for us this past year. And so we're hosting talks with everyone from a Wendell Berry, who's a great legendary leader in agriculture, to how to use land, where's the agricultural movement today, and what's going on in the use of plants for medicine, and that's quite an interesting category for us, so
yeah, that's an interesting thing, and it leads me really to my next question. We seem to see within transformative culture this shift into people wanting to be both independent and community based, within their local community or within a community of people, right? But there is definitely this independence, people want to switch to herbal medicines, because they're trying to take responsibility for their own health in their own home. People are switching to the farm to table movement or permaculture because they want to know where their food is sourced and where it's coming from, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of my analysis as, a social theorist has been trying to kind of identify, what is this transformative culture? Where's it coming from and where's it going? Because I think it's pretty much the most exciting thing in social theory right now. So since you've been so immersed in it, first of all, how would you describe or define the term transformative culture, and what have you seen in that regard?
I think the concept of transformative culture for me, and I believe the people close in working with Evolver, is these pockets of knowledge, which are not necessarily well known, pockets of knowledge and information that by studying it and becoming more acquainted, you almost disintermediate myths or perceptions that we have been conditioned to understand growing up or through our mainstream educational and systems, and the light bulb goes off that this information is there and it's never really been presented to me. I need to actually go out and get it. I think the root of it, though, is empowerment, and that there is a concept of consciousness and deepening consciousness, which first and foremost is just to become aware of the fact that there's an awful lot of knowledge and wisdom that we don't get access to by very smart people, and I think that the pursuit to me seems to be fairly well two kind of groups. One, the group who like you said, Eric, are maybe more solitary, a bit anti-commercial, a bit pro-activist,
Sure.
a bit, pro-activist, very very skeptical of the traditional corporate structures, big corporate structures, and yet but fairly a shyness in that they just want to go and explore on their own without a lot of fanfare, and they're doing it to deepen their awareness to things. There's another group which is more about community. We're all in this together to save everything. We need everybody. The climate, the sustainability issues of the planet, planetary, and that if we can form communities and groups and feel the strength, the synergy of people really getting together to march, to protest, to work together, to build new companies, new types of models, that we're gonna transform our society to one that is can provide livelihood for people, be fun, be raise consciousness. I see both very solitary, independent pursuit, and then this kind of we're all we need to all be there together. That's what I'm observing.
Right, and it definitely seems, even like as far as like electronic to organic. You were saying how you've been promoting herbalism or alternative remedies lately, and then there's the other side of the spectrum, people that are looking at things like the World Wide Web as a catalyst for planetary transformation. So it's definitely fascinating how you have both those paradigms sort of coming together, which at one time were polar opposites.
Yes. Yeah, the peer-to-peer. I mean, even in where are the really huge success stories in internet, peer-to-peer sharing economies. What you're seeing with Airbnb, with Uber. These very major shifts in how we're taking out the middle, getting rid of the middle guy, and just connecting people up. It is very much, I think, for Evolver, from our perspective, is part of this use of technology to facilitate change. And there's many new products that are being developed, whether it's around brain research. A lot of things going on. Some of your listeners may be fans of going back to someone like John Lilly, who is a great influence on sensory deprivation and raising consciousness through that. All kinds of advances in technology that are coming from the internet, the change in way we communicate on the internet. I'm digital to physical seems to be very much in fashion. So we're seeing tremendous desire for people to connect physically. In fact, Evolvers is doing more physical events to bring people together around different themes and topics so that there is a connectivity. Obviously, the festival movement, which certainly is led by the Burning Man culture, but all of the opportunities more and more for people, particularly younger people, to get together in a physical way, to celebrate, to exchange ideas and to have fun. Physical convergence seems to be really happening. And a third area that's very interesting is the whole retreats. Maybe it started with the yoga retreats, but people going on retreats, going and getting into an engagement with the shamans, or in some cases experimenting and going on ceremonial journeys with the ayahuasca, and then just getting closer to nature. Lots of stuff going on with that. So people want to also get physical and be connected with each other.
It's fascinating because, back, I would say around 2006, 2005-ish, it was like right around the first time I was exposed to Terence McKenna. I used to bring up the guy's name and people would look at me and be like, who is this guy? I've never heard of him, blah, blah, blah. And it's amazing. And this was after the guy had already passed on. It's amazing to see the absolutely, tremendous expansion and how these ideas have permeated into the culture in that short amount of time. And it's fascinating to think, where are we going to be in another decade from now?
Yeah, it is. It's kind of cool to that's a great point, because I think there is this, back in the day, in the 80s, you had that whole thing with the futurists. There were real thought leaders out there that everyone, felt was really kind of predicting our future. And then things kind of sped up. But I think this whole idea of what is our future, how do we create that future, is definitely coming back into vogue. And who are those, quote unquote futurists? In Evolver, because of our big social media, we have these iconic figures. Carl Sagan, any time you talk about or you read his quotes or his message, Carl Sagan, who was very pro-cannabis, who was one of our great scientists and enlightened us to the cosmos, that kind of guy. Terence McKenna, the Rumi poets, Osho. We have a lot of these philosophers, because with social media, whether it's Facebook or Instagram, the pairing of images with quotes, where you you take someone's quote and you try to pair it with an image that's artistic, that's aesthetic. It's very appealing right now, and I think it's indicative that people. This is an important point, that I think, unlike the Back to Earth movement and the hippie movements, and we're seeing a movement that's a little bit much more feminine in it, the divine feminine, which is more about beauty, that there should be beauty, there should be aesthetics, art, the visionary art scene, whether it's the classic guys like Alex Gray or Amanda Sage, Android Jones. Evolver is fortunate that we're working, we have relationships with all these cats, and and to have an ability to share that is exciting,
No, absolutely, and especially when it comes to visionary art, because that's just so exciting, and as an appreciator of art, as an artist myself, it's just so interesting to see this innovative work, even just a few months ago, we talked to a visionary artist named Mark Henson. And what a great guy, and he's working in he works in oil and canvas, You know, so I
Really,
mean,
yeah,
it's not, it's not anything truly radical, but the work he produces with oil and canvas is just incredible,
yeah,
and
amazing.
so cutting edge. And there seems to be so much good art out there now. And it is really
Definitely.
interesting that you guys have put up so much of it. It seems like you do have really good relationships with that world.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, it's funny because I think the whole visionary art is kind of almost a it's almost like a documentary of trying to reflect on the individual expansion of consciousness that's going on, whether it's, the visions you have when you're under the influence of experimenting with a psychedelic. Of course, that seems to be a great source of fuel for the visionary artists. But the fact is that many of them are actually not. Um, they're not coming from a psychedelic. They're coming even from the surrealists and just mixing and composites of photographs with illustration. We're doing a whole thing on sci-fi now because I'm kind of excited about the Frank Herbert's Dune and
Mm.
Arthur C. Clarke and Ray Bradbury and Isaac Asimov. So what we're kind of doing with the Evolvers, like, let's go back and what were they writing about? What were they really talking about, these guys? Because
Yeah.
they created fantasy, and some of that fantasy is in the transformative cultural movement is becoming reality,
Yeah.
Sci-fi, fantastic, a little scary, is actually in transformative cultures. Wow, that's real,
Yeah.
So some
Yeah.
of those, I'm curious of how you feel about that, how you guys feel about that.
Well, honestly, it's odd that you bring it up. It always seems like our interviews, they all tie together in some way, right?
Yeah,
Our last show was on 3D printing and cutting edge technology. Okay,
yeah,
and
uh-huh,
we ended up talking a lot about science fiction in that in
huh,
that show, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
it seems like we often come back. I would actually like to do a whole show on sci-fi at some point.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But I mean, really, those guys, they were visionary writers. I mean, they could see a future that nobody else could see at the time, and that
that's
future is
right,
manifesting itself. It really is
yeah.
manifesting.
Yeah, you know what's funny is that this is, I mean, I think it'd be something just to point out is that there's another, the gaming movement, which the gamers, video gamers, which is an amazing cult, right, and a powerful one today.
It is.
Um, uh, the preoccupation with the popularity of games that have a violent, you know, violent component to it, right? And
Hmm.
there's a movement underway. We're talking with some gaming companies about how can we use the sci-fi, you know, and bring this kind of excitement and fantasy back without necessarily the same extent of violence, and can you achieve gaming opportunities where people can really game and get off on the gaming without quite the same drama and violence. And the transformative cultural stuff may create some opportunities for that, which would even bring a more youthful audience into being open to these topics, so and we even see it in we're talking with people in growing technologies. They're perfecting growing technologies out of cannabis. Well, how can we use those technologies to kind of reconfigure the kitchen so you could grow your medicine? Do it yourself. Grow, not just grow your basil and stuff, but actually grow your medicine so it's fresh. Or the filtration of water. We're coming to the end of where tap water will be the fresh water because the filtration systems can infuse the water with higher alkaline, higher pH, and I think everybody in the conscious world wants to get away from bottled water. It's, not really that good. So, all of these things, I'm kind of jumping around, but all of these elements are really contributing to what this transformative cultural journey is. I mean, I'm getting into water because we have to pair tonics to create tonics. We got to match an herbal formulation with water, right? It's served at water, and in a time where more and more consumers are going to bars and going to lounges, but they're not necessarily drinking. They're choosing to be non-alcoholic. Very often they're dismissed. So you have, it's kind of dismissive. If you're not drinking with your friends and buddies, well then, how can you really feel good and have a good time? And this is all of these small trends. Well, if you could have elixirs on the menu and things which were either served with alcohol or not, but in the non-alcoholic, the water becomes even that much more important. Well, what is the water? What's going into that water? These are just little examples of what we're seeing, and our audience is responding very well to it. So I feel it's more widespread.
Yeah, it's certainly exciting to see it, because I mean, even like looking back into the 90s and early 2000s, it definitely looks like a massive shift has occurred from, the sort of nihilistic consumerist culture where people will just buy whatever's, being advertised, to the more, alternative / transformative culture really gaining a massive foothold. And it's just really exciting to see so many people going out of their way to empower themselves and to do things themselves. It's really something to behold.
It really is. It really is, and it is. I think the thing is that's happening now that's so great is that I think we are transforming. I mean, we are. We're. Change is the constant. We are transforming, and if we can choose to surround ourselves with relationships, professional, friendship, more intimate ones that are aligned that way, kind of helps us get there. I just don't think that there are that many. I think that now maybe the larger marketers are going to begin to tap into that and want to kind of market to that. So it's likely that things could get more diluted. It's like the natural foods movement. Just because something's natural doesn't necessarily mean it's good. So we may see some of that whitewashing, or to give you a great example, we do some posts. Seems to be really a lot of sensitivity by people out there to when you take the image of a multicultural, a Tibetan or an African, and you misappropriate the use of the message. In other words, an image, and then you're kind of using it to make a statement, but it's really not paying respect to the fact that that's a Native American, or we put a post up where somebody else, not a Native American, was wearing a headdress, and we got slammed by a really large constituency of people that says, oh, you shouldn't be using indigenous imagery to make a point, when people don't understand the roots of that imagery, that like a religious artifact, or so the sensitivity is saying, well, people are getting more aware because they're speaking out on behalf of minorities or multicultural, or our tendency to romanticize the women in Africa, or these people in Guatemala, and so forth. I don't know if you hear that with your audience, but we're hearing that a lot. A lot of pushback.
Yeah, you do see that, and it is part of I think part of it is, people just have a new cultural consciousness. You know what I mean? They have respect for
Yes.
a lot of these cultures, and they're learning more about those cultures. They're not just viewing them as a stereotype anymore. Especially because a lot of these things are very important. Like Eastern philosophy is very important to me personally. I'm not of that heritage, but that culture is important to me. And I think a lot of people are increasingly feeling that about indigenous cultures, cultures that they may not necessarily be connected to. So I think there is kind of a new awareness.
Yeah,
you know
especially here in America, because I feel like here in America we were for so long we were sort of cut away from our roots, and I think post 9/11 especially people were just sort of the realization sort of occurred. It's like, well, who are we really? Like, are we really just the byproducts of these corporations? Like, what are our roots? And I think that kind of contributes to why there's been this resurgence within the last 15
Yeah.
years.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's good. It's healthy. It's healthy.
yeah
Yeah.
Yeah, here in the States, in the West, a lot, but especially in the States, we don't. There is no such thing as American culture. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
kind of an oxymoron in my mind. People are very isolated and alienated. It's essentially what culture you get in the United States is just something that's consumed and purchased. You know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and I think some of like the new transformative culture is honestly, we haven't had a counterculture since the 60s in the
That's
United
right.
States.
Yeah,
you
that's
know
right. That's right. And we had the it's funny. I wonder whether you feel this way, but we had the anti-war movement, which was such a big social activist movement, um, and today, I think we need, where are we falling in terms of activism? Is it just many different causes? Are there some overarching causes? Because activism is a part of this, certainly climate change. The recent march where you had over 1 million people. I mean, I think that's made up of people who are substantially, on the conscious side of the equation.
hmm
Free expression, human rights, free expression seems to be quite strong. You know, it just galvanizing, and how activism plays into the transformative culture movement is something I don't have the answers. I'm just asking those questions of
That's
where when because when do you know you have to take a stand? And
that's something
yeah,
that's heavily on my mind with it.
yeah. Hmm.
Often is because I came into this whole thing through activism, right?
Hmm.
Through political activism, yeah, particularly anarchist activism. I don't make a secret
Yes.
of the fact what my
Right.
politics are on this show.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's how I came into it. That's how I became aware of it. It was just such an exciting, interesting thing. But I do wonder, how do we merge the activist movement, right, with the transformative culture? Like, how do we? And I realize that just by being involved in this, it's revolutionary. It's
Yes. Yeah.
evolutionary.
Yes.
But I also do wish there was more activism. I mean, I wish we would see another Occupy movement in
Yes.
the next
Yes.
year.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
I
Well, the
think the
Occupy
transformative
movement.
culture.
Yeah, the Occupy movement. That's a great reference, because I think that very much was made up of courageous people that were willing to step out and take a stand.
hmm
And the transformative cultural movement can sometimes be perceived as being soft, kind of soft, and not,
hmm
not. I don't think that's a fair assessment, but you do need these moments where you stand up, and maybe guys, maybe it'll happen more on the local level. Evolver, we have a nonprofit arm where it's the nonprofit, a series of spores in different major markets who are meeting and come together, one, because they're not in big cities necessarily, although we have them in big cities, but who they come together and they're working on local issues that move communities along to advance themselves, and it very much has an activist attitude to it. So maybe some of this happens at the very local level, where you feel, I can make a difference in my town or my community, because I know people, I know how, and people that are into consciousness and transformative get together, and they're in markets that it's not so easy to find those people, so you need to kind of cuddle up and meet and kind of organize around initiatives. Perhaps that'll grow, in the future. But activism and transformative culture has not, it's not quite aligned yet. It's not quite aligned yet. But the
I think
Occupy
all the ingredients are there.
Yeah.
I really feel like all the ingredients are there. It's just, I think we just need to reach the terminal velocity with it, to really get that ball rolling.
Yeah. And then, the argument that, a lot of conscious people are apathetic about government and political systems and kind of check out of being involved in those things, and kind of just check out and, focus on their own consciousness. And sometimes that's perceived as being selfish or not connecting to community, So I don't think that's the case, but I do think that's the perception. How do you feel about that?
No, I think you're right. I think that is the perception, and some of the perception too is that, it's just, it's just festival culture. That's what a lot of people just, they just see the festival culture and they think that's all it is.
Yeah.
I think you're right about being on the local level, though, because I know a lot of people who are, passionate about transformative culture, who even in our local area, they start, we have, urban gardening and stuff like that.
Yes.
Which is a good way to people to access that activism. On your local level, you're engaging with things you're interested in, plants, permaculture.
Yes.
You're engaging with people, like-minded people. I think that's the gateway, is that
Absolutely.
local activism.
Absolutely. And I think a cool thing, that would be great, for Evolver to do more and more is to get that live feedback from people. It's easy to say you want community and you want to build community as a brand, but that's customer service. That you have if you ask people to engage, you got to have people ready to listen, and you have to be willing to listen to all points of view. And I think one of the organizational challenges for 21st century organizations is how to stay flat enough so that the organization can really listen to what its community is asking for and try to provide service to it, and not get caught up in being a brand that kind of pushes out a message or an attitude and not listen, which is it's very easy. Somebody doesn't get they don't get the satisfaction that they need by reaching out. We have many artists and people reaching out now. Would you sell my thing? Would you post my art? Would you do that? And so you want to filter it, but you also want to say thank you. That's what you're asking for. Here's the engagement. And so we're trying to find organizationally, this is a challenge of how to really enable people to connect with us, and then how do we get out of the way so they can connect with other people. I still think is very much a work in progress, but we're very dedicated to it.
I mean, I like that model. I mean, I like it anytime when somebody's talking about a horizontal method of organizing something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Horizontal, decentralized,
Yeah.
participatory. Because honestly, I think those are the keys to building anything successful and anything that's going to be inclusive.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
the top down model has failed us so many times.
No question. But you learn on the job. I'm the CEO, and I am right now the primary arbiter of how we manage our social media. So, because I felt that I would learn the most about what the audience was interested in, and by actually doing it, and even at the expense of distractions where I could be doing things that other people really couldn't do. So a lot of our internal org development work of building a company is what are the roles and responsibilities? What are the obligations? How do we think differently? That goes. That's a big part of. You say you want to be in the transformative culture. Well, how are we? How are we measuring performance? Working? Do you come to an office? Do you work remotely? All of these kind of issues also become important to us as a very young company working with lots of different resources. And I like always to emphasize that we're learning together. This is
Yeah.
it doesn't come with instructions.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You kind of have to feel your way through it in the dark, I suppose.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's the same thing we've been doing here as well. I mean, we started this podcast. I mean, Pat and I had no idea what we were doing when we
Right.
started this a year ago. You learn by doing things.
Yes.
And now we've got all kinds of other projects we want to put in the fire here for this year, and you just kind of have to feel your way and find what works and find what doesn't and find what people respond to.
Yeah. Definitely. A very interesting another piece I just touch on is that there are over 1 million holistic, individuals who would say that they're healers or they're holistic practitioners in the United States. It includes all the body workers, the Reiki, the massage therapists, the chiropractors, So some are certified, right?
Right.
And some are not. And this community is very, very active. And we're engaging more and more with this kind of a healer network of practitioners who are either full-time in the livelihood if they're successful, or they're just moving into the livelihood of saying, hey, I do natal charts, or I do palmistry, or I do tarot, or I do Reiki, or I do body work stuff, energy healing, sound healing, which is really popular right now. This whole thing of sound healing. So we're trying to figure out how that's a leading edge of the transformative culture, because those individuals are choosing as a lifestyle and a livelihood, and we're learning a lot from observing these many people who are saying, I want to be creative. I'm not an artist, but I can work with my hands. And then all of a sudden, they're studying with a teacher, and they're becoming practitioners. And that may be the seeds of a bigger part of this movement over the next several years. Obviously, the yoga movement is the leading edge, right? Yoga has been the primary, way for someone to get into relaxing enough and getting in touch with their body, and et cetera, et cetera. But we're seeing a lot of splintering, lots of things going on, at least in the urban market that we're in, the New York market, LA market.
I can imagine. Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, yoga has been so I don't know, it's so incredibly popular now. I mean, even 20 years ago, people didn't know what yoga was.
Right.
you know,
Right.
meditation as well. Like a lot of people are practicing meditation now.
Yep.
I see a lot of things. With those things, you are starting to see the mainstream trying to pick it up.
Sure.
You know,
Sure.
um, especially with yoga, and then you go through the new age section of a bookstore, and you're gonna find 30 books on meditation. The Idiot's Guide to Medication,
Yeah.
meditation, etc.,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah.
Whereas before, I remember going to that section, there'd be a couple of books about like zazen meditation,
Yeah.
and
I
it
know.
is strange to see.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
You go through a day with me. You go through a day with me, and it's you don't think you know how to breathe. You don't know what water you should be drinking. You're not sure whether it's better to do CrossFit or to do Pilates. By the time the day is over, you don't want to do anything because there's so many different modalities that are being cultivated. And so, how do you filter through them? How do our shared audience filter through this stuff so they know what works, what doesn't?
Right.
It's tricky. There's plenty of pretending.
Absolutely.
Plenty of pretending going.
Yeah. And it's like you almost just got to put them all out on the table. Put them all out there, and what's authentic and what has substance will most likely rise to the top.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's a very exciting time though. Another area too is music. I mean, I think we're going to see, and we're seeing more and more opportunities to bring these other this sensorial aspects of transforming, taste, sound, smell, all the touch points are getting developed into, creatives are working on music and beats and sounds that and giving, come home. Maybe in the next few years, you'd come home and you not meditate, but you might listen to 5 minutes or 10 minutes of sounds, beats that are, really designed to touch points so you can relax, change your mood without dependency on a cannabis or other stuff. And for some, that might be the way in which they move through the day. There's lots of apps being developed that kind of prompt you to listen to something, particularly with music and video too, visual. So that's going to probably merge with wearable electronics, because the accessibility that we're going to get with wearable electronics is going to, certainly go past monitoring, how far you walked or how fast you ran, and biorhythms, measuring biorhythms, giving you feedback on your moods, and then prompting with things you can do to kind of balance. We're likely to see an awful lot of that happen, in this effort to kind of capture the market of this consumer.
No, yeah, I agree. That honestly, it excites me quite a bit. The merging of all these technologies, especially like what you said when it comes to art. We were talking earlier about the gaming community. You have these things like interactive novels now. When that merges with something like virtual reality, like the Oculus Rift, you have this immersive novel that you're walking around in. I mean, that opens doorways. I mean, that's incredible.
Sure.
Definitely.
Sure, and you also have modalities such as something like ayahuasca being merged with yoga. I mean, that's the first time that's probably ever happened in all
Yeah,
of human history, you know,
absolutely.
and we're at the cusp of that.
Absolutely. I mean, we do, we host different, we have, we have the unusual, it's like, I know a guy, well, we know the shamans, and we have these great relationships with shamans who are coming to the States, guided, hosted by very, dedicated people who have spent time in Peru or Brazil, and they're bringing them up and they're doing ceremonies, and people are, paying quite a bit of money to have a guided ceremony, and it very often includes yoga or stretching or some body activity, and not just the people like the ritual. We
Mm-hmm.
notice that people like ritual. They like the idea that it's very intentional. That you're not just going out and doing something. You're actually coming to a space. The space has been smudged, with
Mm-hmm.
sage. Um, there's a wisdom and knowledge in the teacher. The teacher is engaging with each of the participants. It isn't necessarily a prescription for ayahuasca, but it is some psychotropic mushroom, or that's in the tool chest, and then a shared experience, which is very interesting, and the demand is growing. And so with that, you'll get pollution, and you'll get bad experiences, but we're fortunate to have we just have the access to really good teachers, because of the history of the company and the founders. Yeah, I'm trying to stay above all that, and stay in the space of the health wellness paradigm. That for Evolver, how do we really make this a sustainable wellness movement, so you're healthier, you feel better, you feel more empowered, and therefore you can do more, to help yourself, and and contend with what's really going on around. So that's very important to us.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to find yourself first. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And get into a good get into a good lifestyle, good headspace,
Yeah.
before you can help anyone. Right? Sure. You know.
Yeah.
And I appreciate what you guys do, most certainly.
Well,
Um,
thank you. I mean, trying to, I'm trying tonight to just share some, organically, some observations, but really express a certain amount of humility. That one of the great things about this movement is you have to stay humble, if you stay close to your humility, and not try to put it over on everybody, it gets better, because you lower the expectations of your audience to contribute, and I'm trying to inform the people that are working in and around the company with us, that the confidence is important, and being assertive and ambitious is great, but let's stay on the humble side, um, so that better things come to us. And as soon as you're willing to listen, people will share. But traditionally, brands and marketers, they want to push a point of view um, into some monetizing consequence, and that's a dilemma we have with capitalism, don't you think? I mean, that's a
I
yeah.
completely agree. And honestly, it brings to mind. Are you familiar with Amanda Palmer at all?
A little bit, a little
Yeah,
bit. Tell me about her. Yeah.
she's a musician. She just wrote a book, The Art of Asking, and I encourage people to look at the TED Talk. She
Uh-huh.
did a she did a TED Talk, and she posed. She's known for she'd left her record company, and she funded a really well produced album on Kickstarter, and people just poured out support to her, right?
Hmm.
And I mean, they let her band stay at their houses. I mean, she travels the whole
Yeah.
country essentially just by knowing people through social media, right? But she
Right.
posed the question. The question isn't how do we get people to pay for music, it's how do we let people pay for music.
That's right. That's
you
a
know
great. Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, really check out the TED Talk. Amanda Palmer, um and the book's great as well. It just came out, but she's just so impressive, and I think that's the future of music. I think it's the future of art. How do we let people pay for these things? We don't need the whole corporate structure to do this, to produce art. We've been producing art for a really long time before.
Yes.
you know so
Yes. Yes.
um but
Yes.
it's exactly what it is, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that is. I think that. Yeah. I think that there's a lot of ways to. One theme we're gonna be focusing on this year is currency, and what's the future. What's the future of money and currency, and you know, I'm a big believer that we give up our data and our information freely, right? And they got us to give it up for an email account, if you really think about it.
Hmm.
And I'm not, I think the companies such as Google and so on are on the right side for the most part, particularly around free expression. But these big data farms are consuming the data, and I don't think we're getting enough back, particularly the middle class. And so one of our big themes this year is this currency, and how do you reward someone if they pay more attention to your content? How do you reward them? How do you create new ways of sharing and bartering where you have something that I want, and maybe the next generation of what eBay did to bring auctioning, what I don't need you need. And I think there's some really interesting stuff's going to happen around value and currency of time and data, and and
Hmm.
and that who owns the data right now is making an awful lot of profit off the assemblage of this enormous amount of data, but the individual is lost. Yeah, maybe his personal data is not shared, but the fact is it's a profile, it's a group, and I think you're going to see conscious consumers more and more recoil from more and more awareness that if I'm going to give my data and I'm going to give my time and information and point of view, I want something back for that. I need something to trade, some kind of currency to be recognized for that. And I think it's an interesting area, a theme we're exploring this year.
Yeah, I think a lot about. I'll be looking forward to that. I think a
Yeah.
lot about alternative economic models, alternative currencies. We've
Yeah.
touched on it on the show a little bit. I'd like to do so more.
Yeah, you should
Um,
you should get we should get you Charles Eisenstein. He's an interesting guy.
I would
Uh,
love to talk to Charles
yeah,
Eisenstein. I
yeah,
love his book, Sacred
yeah,
Economics.
yeah,
I
yeah,
recommend it to everybody.
yeah. We
Um,
we pu- we were our imprint was he's a close and advocate ally of Evolver, and he'd be a great guy. He's a great guy to there's a bunch of really cool thought leaders in these spaces like sacred economics. People don't really understand what's that mean, but once you get him, you get a few of these guys, and you get them in the right mood. They're just awesome, and they could be very helpful to you. And I think your viewership would find them very, very interesting.
oh, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah. So we happy to hook you up with some of these folks.
that's
Um,
fantastic.
yeah.
It looks like we are coming up on our hour, Lou.
Okay.
It seems like we just started, but
It's okay.
uh,
It's
you know,
okay. I hope this was helpful, and again, really appreciate the time to meet with you guys and connect a little bit with your audience, and the spirit here is it's to save everything. We're all in it together, and if people are willing to step up and engage, we're here to try to listen and be receptive, to learning together.
Well, why don't you tell everybody, you give out the contact for Evolver so everybody can check out the site and the social media.
Yeah, I think if you want to really get a feel for our focus and topics, go to Facebook, the Evolver. It's Evolver Social Movement. It's one word, Evolver Social Movement. You go on there and you get on the Facebook. Our website is evolver.net. And if you go on to evolver.net, you can access easily our learning lab, which is a list of all our courses and webinars. And you can go to the Apothecary, which is a really cool presentation of the finest in herbal and botanical medicines, whole plant beauty. And we'll hope to come back and visit with you guys soon. Thank you.
That sounds great. Thanks a lot. All those will be linked in the description. Lou Sagar of Evolver.net, Free Radical Media Podcast. Thanks a lot for listening.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night,
okay.
Lou. Thank you.